Do you have an outline for me?
Yeah, it's on the table.
Okay.
Is that it?
Yeah. Is that it? Thank you.
Oh God.
All right.
Okay, you can now press record and hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to another speech. And today I'm gonna be doing today's speech is gonna be about parkour. And for those of you that don't know what parkour is, watch the video. Hit play.
Please.
This is Parkour, internet sensation of 2004, and it was in one of the Bond films. It's pretty impressive. The goal is to get from point A to point B as creatively as possible. So technically, they are doing parkour as long as point A is delusion and point B is the hospital.
Okay, we all go together or we go one at a time.
Here it is. Truck to refrigerators to dumpster, 360 spin onto the pouch, backflip gainer into the trash can.
Yeah.
Parkour!
This happens when with a bunch of YouTube videos and all that good stuff, and you don't press next yet, but that's okay. Anyways, in this speech, I'm going to be talking about what is parkour, the history behind it, and basically how popular it is. And without further ado, wait. Before we start, I've always been interested in parkour, and in fact, I've always been been doing it a few times, none on video really, but without further ado, let's get started, because why not? What is parkour? According to the World Parkour Freerunning Association, parkour is basically an act of moving obstacles from point A to point B. According to the artofmanliness.com, it's basically used to move through an environment as quickly as possible. So, you gotta just move from one point A to point B as fast as possible. And also according to Apex Movement, they're basically parkour is also being used as a synonym with free running, but there is a massive difference between free running and parkour, which I'll get to later on when we start, which I'll get to later on. Even though they're used interchangeably, there are major differences, like I said, but okay, I'm gonna start explaining what parkour basically what parkour basically is basically it's more focused on efficiency, while free running it's more focused on like creative freedom, flips, acrobatic stuff, all that boring. Well, not really boring, but you guys get the idea. It's basically not focused on efficiency. According to HowStuffWorks.com, there are people who practice parkour are called trucheurs, which means to trace. Females is called trucheuses, which means, and the reason why they're called this is because of their French origin. And speaking of their French origin, it's time to look at their history. According to the artofmanliness.com, parkour actually originates from the 19th century by Jorge Herbert. Who was actually serving in the French Navy during a trip to Africa. At that time, he was actually viewing a tour in Africa, and when he saw the natives go through trees and go through the environment, he was basically very impressed, and he discovered that physical education is used in order to create strong-willed people. And so Jorge Herbert created this thing called méthode naturelle, or natural method, of course. Basically just combining the body and mind together, and just to use it for physical strength and in order to move around obstacles. And that's when the term parkour du combattant, according to HowStuffWorks.com, also is basically a parkour, basically an military obstacle course used by the French Navy, and that's actually where the term parkour comes. And yes, we pronounce parkour with a K, not a C. Why? Because we're American. So what? And this eventually led to, according to HowStuffWorks.com, this led to the parkour really started becoming more invented, if you can say, by a guy named David Bell, and that's him, in 1988. He was actually a member of the group called the Yamakaze, who along with some other people like Sebastian Falcon, the inventor of freerunning, and also the Yamakaze ended up dissolving because because of a debate about whether or not efficiency was more important than creative freedom when it comes to moving around obstacles. And in fact, the hit next, he was inspired. Basically, how do I say this? David Bell was inspired by a guy named Bruce Lee. A lot of you have probably heard of who Bruce Lee is, one of the greatest martial artists of all time. And that's how David Bell got really inspired. There have been some posts on YouTube about people doing parkour, which on the internet, so that's why it's popular right now. I mean, it's been dying out since, but I'll get to that later. And without further ado, it's time to talk about how popular it is right now. According to ApexMovement.com, parkour became trending on the internet in the early 2000s. By 2006, it has already reached its peak, and it has leveled out since. But recently, it's been dying out a little bit since then. So there have been some of the searches of parkour are also due to games like Minecraft, according to Apex Movement. Also, by around May of 2010, according to Apex Movement, it ended up surpassing skateboarding, an industry that is worth $5 billion in around $5 billion with like, sorry, in 2010. And it does, and unlike snowboarding and all the environmental stuff, parkour is really like not really weather based because you can do parkour basically on snow, sun, and basically any other area essentially. According to Google, there is an international base, obviously because its origin is from France, but there is more than that. All right, 1 minute. Anyways, according to Google Trends, the most popular country in Google searches is actually the Czech Republic, or also known as Czechia. It's followed up by Morocco, Tunisia, Finland, and Denmark. And also, according to Google Trends, obviously it's popular in the United States. The most popular state on Google searches when it comes to parkour is actually Utah, and it's actually followed by Idaho, Oregon, Colorado, and Washington. And according to the World Freerunning Parkour Foundation, Urban Free Flow an academy called there's this group called the Urban Free Flow that has 2 academies, one available to the general public and one that's available for people ages 8 to 19. In conclusion, I've talked about the history of parkour, what parkour is, and how popular it is. If you ever have the time, consider doing a bit of parkour. And remember, guys, life can be miserable, but just live it. Oh yeah,